if any of those guys get cut. I think that'd be good, in case Sean Hill can't go the entire season, which, you know, really at the end of the day, not really. He's probably not really used to doing that. Used to going all the way through it, and all the way through a season um, in the NFL. So that in one regard will be pretty interesting to see. Just get my last guy here in the queue, so after him quick once this draft's over. So try not to distract myself too here while I'm talking about Teddy Bridgewater. Because I know probably for a lot of people that this pretty much gives, in their minds, the Packers the slam dunk NFC North championship, which even before Teddy Bridgewater, I think the Packers, at least in my mind, could be biased. But I think with them getting Jordy Nelson back, them getting Jared Cook, it'll make that offense better. They won't struggle as bad as they did last season, and their defense, as we were talking about here, I think they've added depth and really, even if they didn't, if they play kind of status quo to what they did last year, and then offense plays better, I think they're going to be right back to that 12-4 kind of status that they were back in 2014 when they almost won the NFC Championship game, which I don't want to talk about. But anyway, the Vikings passed. So I mean, probably one of the Bridgewater had to be one of the quarterbacks that had the fewest attempts as a starter in most of the games. Or I think Teddy Bridgewater played in all the games last year. And I know the Vikings liked what they saw in Teddy Bridgewater this year that I think really could have helped them keep up, improve themselves, because that division went down right into the last week, and I know either the Packers or the Vikings don't want something like that to happen again this year, but I think that would have put them in a pretty good dogfight for that division championship. And now, I mean, I think you're still in line for a wild card. It's still a pretty built roster. They're 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 knees at, and they still have an offensive line. So Sean Lee, right, we got to put Joel Stave in, and he's had a pretty good camp. I don't know what he would do as a starter. He's a guy that can't even beat Northwestern because of all the stupid mistakes he can make. I mean, when he's playing well, he can play well, but I don't know if that's going to translate into into a starter in the NFL. So that will be interesting to see, but I don't think it's going to hurt him as bad as maybe as people are thinking that it'll hurt him, just because that's that much. And as long as this, I think the team now hinges more on Adrian Peterson, and he is that dread 31 years old. Last year we didn't see that much of a slowdown, but it's gonna be I think a little bit different for the Vikings this year too, because now no matter what, you're going up against a backup quarterback, and your only mission now is going to be stopping AP, which maybe to AP standards he'll have some pretty weak numbers, but other than that, I don't know what will happen there. So yeah, again, Vikings, that hurts that championship. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that too in our NFL preview. And last time we kind of talked about is it necessary to play some of these starters in these preseason games, and now maybe with this serious injury happening and something in practice, that's something that really couldn't be avoided. You kind of wonder, even Jordy Nelson's knee, was we could blame the Heinz Field turf last year. If it was just going to inevitably happen anyway, I don't know, but it might debunk a little bit of my theory of playing preseason games. A lot of people don't know if they don't enjoy football, or preseason football as as much as they think. Um, it's something that usually gets pretty boring. But the NFL, I don't think is ever going to cut. If they're going to cut preseason games, they're going to want to add to um, regular season games because they don't knock any money off the ticket prices. So they're not going to get rid of them, and I still think to a point, if they cut them down to 3, cut it down to 2, you know, these teams, I heard a good analogy today. If they gave them 6 months to make that these final roster spot decisions, they will take up until the last minute of those 6 months to make those decisions. But if they got 6 minutes to do it, they could probably do it in just as much time. They'll take as much time as they're allotted to make those decisions, and I think either way they'll be just fine. And that I think that kind of shows what really happens on preseason games. I think it helps some people to a certain point, but as far as these big battles, I think like we were talking about, is Jared Abadaris going to beat out Devontae Adams for the number 3 spot? That's something I think a lot of it gets settled in camp. I think camps and preseason practices are kind of where a lot of these battles are won. People are kind of wonder, why did Tim Tebow get cut from the Denver Broncos, or traded from the Denver Broncos right after winning that oh my gosh playoff game? And it's because they saw what he could do in practice, and basically Tim Tebow's ceiling was that, scoring 13 points a game. Yes, he's clutch as all hell, but he's like the fullback analogy when talking. They always say this about like John Kuhn. When John Kuhn, you brought John Kuhn to the game, you needed 2 yards, he'd get you 3. When you needed 4 yards, he'd get you 3. And I think they knew that's what Tim Tebow was, where that was all he was gonna get, 13 to maybe a max of 20 points a game. And if your defense had a bad day, which their defense at that time could carry. So anyway, that's besides the point. Tim Tebow did try out for baseball teams. I think he went 1 for 5. I heard he kind of childishly, that's hard to say, snag some fly balls with 2 hands, which I don't know how a lot of the outfielders nowadays doing it, which you can argue the fundamentals of it, catching it with 1 hand. So there's that. But without further ado, I will give you my all Wisconsin. I had to go either Wisconsin played or Wisconsin born for a couple of these picks just to kind of make it work. Without further ado, here is my team. My team is my starting quarterback is Russell Wilson. Starting wide receivers are Jared Abadaris from the Packers, Alex Erickson from the Bengals, and Tanner McAvoy from the Seahawks. These are all guys that played in Wisconsin. My whole starting lineup. Running backs are Melvin Gordon and James White. Starting tight end is Owen Daniels. Kicker Mason Crosby. I know he went to Colorado State, but plays in the state of Wisconsin. The Houston Texans defense, J.J. Watt, Wisconsin. On my bench would be Lance Kendricks, Scott Tolzien, Joel Stave, Tony Romo, and Monte Ball, who is not on a team. He was just there to fill a spot. Could use Nick Toon as well, so there's that argument. But again, he's not on the team as well, since I did waste a pick for Monte Ball. I did this in a mock draft, which I'm sure I just wrecked some guy's mock draft here. I guess at 1:30 in the morning, but it's fun. It's fun to do. Last time I did a mock draft, I ended up being in a league, and I didn't think that was gonna happen, but it did anyway. But anyway, we'll see what happens in some of these. Anyway, going back to the NFL, we'll see what happens with some of these final cuts. I'm sure a lot of teams are waiting to see what happens. I think there's, I don't think any game-changing players. Although you can use that analogy of what the Packers did last year, getting James Jones right at the end of the season, um, right at the end of the preseason to get him and end up being one of their better receivers on that squad, and so there's other things that could help out. I mean the Vikings. You have a quarterback, and again, you have a quarterback in Sean Hill. For how old he is, he's a solid backup quarterback, but can he take enough wear and tear to last a whole 16-game season? And then if you have to go to Joel Stave, are you comfortable enough for him? So if you do see a guy like maybe Mark Sanchez, a guy that can get cut, although you got to worry about a guy that can't even make a team when you have Paxton Lynch, who basically yeah, he's a first round talent, but basically he's a project quarterback, and that's Seisman, whatever his name is, the second year guy out of Northwestern. If he beats you out on a job, you know that you know that you're probably doing something wrong. And of course Colin Kaepernick too. I know someone said they don't think the 49ers are going to cut him because they don't want to go somewhere else, and potential of what he did a few years ago, which really I think a lot of it was just based on he was just another I think a Michael Vick. I think a guy that could run the ball pretty well. Throwing it, I think in his best days it was just mediocre. He would run for his quarterback that I think maybe aged just a little bit too quickly, and I don't think he's gonna. I don't think anything's really gonna become of him. I don't think you have to worry about him just tearing up the league like he did back in 2012 or 2013. I think those days for Colin Kaepernick are over. That being said, if you're not going to move forward with your franchise with him, because I don't know if I would if I were the 49ers, I know that means you'd have to start playing Gabbert, and that's not a great idea either. But if you can even trade him, the Vikings are probably willing to trade for him, and you can get something in return for it. I would do that. Plus, you'd be off the hook for a little bit of his salary as well. And speaking of Colin Kaepernick, of course, he didn't stand for the national anthem in last Friday's game. We've heard about in this week he kneeled, and then, of course, there was the whole issue of him wearing pigs for cops dressed or pigs dressed in cop hats or whatever. And I'm not going to get too much in the political side of it. I disagree with some of what I shouldn't say a lot of what he was protesting about. But if it were me, if I were the 49ers, I would be terribly upset with what's going on, especially with the backlash that you're going to get. It was basically, you do that, people are going to get upset, and now they want to boycott the 49ers, and you're going to hear constant booing, I think, no matter if you keep a guy like Colin Kaepernick on your team. And it's unfair to the 49ers because they had nothing to do with that stance. So, if you're going to go out there and ban 49er games because he's either still sitting on the bench or still sitting during the national anthem, yeah, I guess if he continues to do it, that is on 49ers. But if it was just this one-time deal, or now he's kneeling, which isn't quite as bad, I guess. I don't know. I didn't really read what he's had to say about it because I don't really care. I don't want to give him the time of day for it. But and if he feels these are just causes, this is what I guess I would tell Colin Kaepernick. If you feel these are just causes, which he ended up doing after the fact. I mean, if this was something that you're fighting for, and these are things you were donating money to, and you're making all this money, and you're not playing very well, and then you're donating this money during the off season, and then you choose to do that because no one's paying attention to these causes you're fighting for, it'd be one thing. But basically, you had to wait until you're like, hey, look over here. This is what we need to, this is what's going wrong in America. Okay, what are you doing about it? I'm gonna do $1 million. You kind of got to practice what you preach, I think, before you do the preaching. You're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. And I think that's the biggest thing that I find troubling with with Colin Kaepernick and kind of what he's done. And I don't know, there's